everyone. To talk about the Federal Perkins Loan. I am very, very happy to sort of bring you up to speed on the latest and provide a quick background before I get to the latest. And so I really appreciate your joining and also doing the best you can to share the word with students impacted by what's happening or not happening in Washington, D.C. right now around the Federal Perkins Loan. The Federal Perkins Loan Program has been around since 1958, and it has been very successful in helping Americans access affordable higher education with low-interest loans, particularly aimed at low-income students who cannot borrow or only could borrow at much higher interest rates than the Federal Perkins Loan. This provides more than 20,000 low-income students with more than $4 million in aid, and that's obviously a very, very significant reach and impact from this program. Schools themselves, the higher education campuses, initiate, service, and collect these fixed interest rate loans. And that's rather unique to have these campus-based loans rather than having them originate and be serviced in a more centralized way. And what's more is that because the institutions maintain these loans, they have leveraged the Federal Perkins Loans dollars with millions more money that the institutions themselves have dedicated to the program. So they leverage a lot of other dollars. And then last but not least, this is a revolving fund. So as students repay their loans, it goes available to the next generation of students that come through the institution. The program also is able to help students make a wider range of choices about career post-college. Certainly to look at opportunities like public service because the program offers targeted loan cancellations for students in specific professions and in areas of significant national needs such as teaching, nursing, and law enforcement. Now, knowing that this program was set to expire at the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th of this past month, I gathered my colleagues, both Democrat and Republican, and we launched an effort to save this program. However, in the United States Senate, as I'm sure many of you are aware, we do a lot of our activity by unanimous consent, and that means that a single senator, one senator, can stand up and make his or her objection known and stand in the way of what we're trying to do. And that's just what happened in our efforts to continue the Federal Perkins Loan Program. This Senator, Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and he stood up and blocked our bipartisan effort to extend this critical program. I can tell you I was extremely frustrated with that because I know as I travel around the state of Wisconsin how critical this program is to students. I know the difference it makes, and I know the frustration that my constituents have that Congress is not doing enough to address the debt burden that students face and to make higher education more affordable and more accessible. And yet the fact that just one senator could stand up and reject a bipartisan and common sense measure to make education more affordable and accessible is a perfect example of why the American people are so frustrated and upset with what is happening in Washington and what's not happening in Washington. I was very disappointed with what happened 2 weeks ago when Senator Alexander objected to moving forward. I am not giving up this fight, and I know that my bipartisan group of my colleagues aren't giving up this fight, and I know that students and folks on college campuses across this country are not giving up on this fight. I am going to once again today head to the floor of the United States Senate and use this unanimous consent request technique again to force the Senate to stand up and take a position to pass this legislation and reauthorize the program. What I will tell you, unfortunately, that Senator Alexander has changed his position or his opposition or any other change of heart. Nonetheless, I remain hopeful in the long run because I know that Senator Alexander, as well as many, many, many of my colleagues, are hearing from educators across campuses and students across campuses across the United States about the importance of this program. And I certainly urge all of you in your writing to make sure that people are really aware of the status of this program and understand what they can do to speak out to see its renewal. We are still in the process in the HELP Committee, and the HELP Committee stands for the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, in looking at Higher Education Act reauthorization. I just want you to know that the Perkins Loan Program is a part of that larger effort, and I'm going to continue to fight throughout this this session to renew this program and keep it strong for many years to come. So with that, I am happy to take a few questions from you.
Excuse me. All right, Senator. My name is Peter Culver. I'm a reporter with the Badger Herald. You actually gave my commencement address 2 years ago at West High School.
Oh, a Western Regent.
Yes. All right. So a colleague of mine spoke with Representative Pocan last week about this, about the, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, about the Perkins Loan Program. Would you agree with his assessment that deauthorization would especially affect students changing their major partway through their college careers?
So the question is, what is the impact on students who are changing their major through during the course of their study? Is that the question?
That's correct.
You know, I guess there's certainly impact that it can have. So if you look at it with all of the other loan programs that are out there, some of them have, well, they all have different sort of restrictions and eligibility requirements. If the change of a major means that the course of study will be longer than, say, 4 years or a given number of semesters available to that student or after a given number of semesters, because some of them are constrained by the number of semesters. And so an institution-based loan can provide additional flexibility. The other thing I would say, and this goes back to my earlier opening comments, is because the Perkins loans are associated with a number of loan cancellation and forgiveness programs for students who not only participate in a certain course of study in high demand areas, but also end up working in those areas, that can also provide an advantage. So it depends what the change in course of study is, but I could see that being as a particular advantage. The fact that these are institution-based loans, in other words, loans where the colleges can kind of be focused on the individual needs of a student. sometimes these loans are for things beyond tuition, oftentimes they are, and make it possible for somebody to complete an education. So I do see them as a lot more nimble and flexible than other financial aid programs, and could see how they would be of great use to somebody who's perhaps changing their major. There may be some other aspects that I've missed in my answer to you, and I'm happy to follow up later if that's the case.
All right. The Perkins program has stood since 1958. So am I correct in my impression that it has been in the past reauthorized?
Yeah, I don't know the specific history of how many times it's been on the verge of sunset. That in recent years, Congress did make a decision to have a sunset date of September 30th of this year, and so at the end of the fiscal year. That decision was made in the context of a goal that we would be reauthorizing the Higher Education Act in its entirety. The Higher Education Act deals with all forms of financial aid, and I think the presumption was at the time that we would be a lot further along in that process by this moment, and therefore we would have reauthorized the Federal Perkins Loan Program in that larger bill. I know that there are some folks out there who think that we should make some tweaks to the Federal Perkins Loan Program. Others, as you've become aware from our conversation and from reading the news, other folks would like to see it go away, which is very regrettable. But it's expired our work on the Higher Education Act is just its justification for renewing it. Let's renew it for a year, give ourselves some more time to look at the larger financial aid picture and college affordability and accessibility issues generally, and then not disrupt nearly 20,000 students in Wisconsin and all of the many others across the nation who rely on the Federal Perkins Loan Program. That just doesn't make sense to me. The other thing I would mention, just to reiterate what I said earlier, in terms of opposition to this program, be limited in the Congress, and that's why it's so disappointing that one senator could stand up and object to our moving ahead with a one-year reauthorization. In the House, the one-year extension passed by voice vote, so unanimously. It's obviously the will of this Congress that this program continue, and so I hope it will. I hope that Senator Alexander will reconsider, and if he doesn't, I hope that we will continue to work together to get a vote on this and move it forward. Kimberly, you have a question? Hi, Kimberly.
So yes, I'm from the Royal Purple, and one of my pressing questions is, I'm curious to know why, if you know, what are some of the reasons that Senator Alexander blocked the resolution?
Well, I alluded to several of them, and of course the only way I know is what he's willing to say publicly, so that I can repeat those to you, and I can't really get into his mind and figure out all of his motivations for this. But I'd start with saying that as chair, he is the chairman of the Senate Education Committee. It's the longer title is the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. We call it the HELP Committee by its acronym as a nickname. So he's chair of the HELP Committee. And he has, as chairman, we've been undertaking a series of hearings in order to reauthorize the Higher Education Act. And, that he wants to deal with this issue in that larger piece of legislation. The problem is that the current federal, as I mentioned, Perkins loan authorization expired on September 30th, and we have not yet passed this larger bill that he's working on. And I think the gap is very, very unfortunate because of the uncertainty that it leaves so many people having to deal with. So he has said that he wants to make some changes, or frankly, you know, he would probably eliminate the program and consolidate it with other financial aid programs. That's what he's alluded to in his public comments. But again, you know, we have another day to debate the provisions of the Higher Education Act. But today, we have a lapsed program, the Federal Perkins Loan Program, and that's unacceptable in my mind.
One more question. I guess what kind of compromises were made when creating the bipartisan resolution?
Say that again. What kind of compromises?
Yep. So with the bipartisan resolution, what kind of compromises did you guys make when developing the new one?
Support of the Federal Perkins Loan Program, support of the Senate to keep it going extend it by another year while we deal with the Higher Education Act. And so it's a very simple, straightforward Senate resolution that has been joined by a bipartisan array of colleagues. On the House side, they actually voted for a one-year extension, and that's what we're trying to pass through the Senate right now. It makes no changes to the Federal Perkins Loan Program as it currently is. It just extends it for a year so that we have it in place and students who participate in the Perkins Loan Program can feel secure that the program will be around for another year as we debate some of the larger issues around financial aid.
Great.
Kai, I understand you have a question.
Hi, I'm Jessica from the Advanced Titan at UW Oshkosh.
Great.
I just have a quick question about if the resolution does not pass, will you be able to work with other senators to get them on board? What could you make changes to the Federal Perkins loan, make compromises that way, raise the interest rate if possible? I mean, I know that's not what we want, but would you be willing to make those kind of compromises?
So first of all, let's deal with the short-term extension, the extension for a year. When I go to the floor of the Senate this afternoon, I'm going to be asking unanimous consent that the Senate take up the House-passed bill, and again, that passed the House by a voice vote unanimously. So I'm going to ask the Senate basically to do the same, and if no one objects, then it'll pass the Senate. We send it on to the President for his signature. I do suspect, however, that once again, Senator Alexander is going to come to the floor and object. Our other alternative outside of having unanimous consent to move this one-year extension forward would be to have a full debate on the Senate floor about the year extension and a vote on it. So one senator couldn't block it. And I feel like if we had the opportunity to do that, it would pass, given the strong Republican support that I've gathered for extending the program for a year. I feel like if we had an up or down vote, that would be great. Unfortunately, I do not control the agenda of the Senate in terms of what's going to be scheduled for debate. So while I can go to the Senate floor and ask unanimous consent, I do not get the option as a member of the Senate of bringing this House-passed bill up for a full debate and a roll call vote. That's Mitch McConnell, who gets to decide as Senate Majority Leader. But what we can do through this effort on Senator Alexander and Senator McConnell to take action on this in the short run. In the long run, you asked about sort of what compromises that I would be willing to make and others would be willing to make. You know, when we get to the point of putting together the legislation to reauthorize the Higher Education Act, I will be looking big picture at college affordability and all the loan programs that are out there, as well as all the grant programs that are out there. I think with a goal to strengthening them and creating greater opportunities. So, so there's a lot of room at that point for modification of the programs, et cetera. What I would tell you on the Perkins program is that it's unique and it's exceptional in many, many ways. The fact that it's institution-based and that the universities and colleges can sort of shape the program to help individual students be able to finish their education, that addresses needs that some of the other loan programs do, and special it largely in its current form. And when I hear from students who have benefited from the Perkins Loan Program, as well as the financial aid workers and administrators at campuses across Wisconsin, they really feel that this is a very special and unique program that they want to see kept intact. I think Shannon has a question.
My computer's lagging a little bit, so I'm just trying to catch up.
Okay.
You said that it was institution-based?
Yep.
So typically have the loans been distributed on school size or need-based, or how did they get the loans?
Well, since the program's been around since the late 1950s, on some specifics of how, say, an institution that hasn't used the Perkins Loan Program before can become involved, and how a lot of the decisions would be made on what sort of allocation they would get. What I'd be happy to follow, and what I sort of know off the top of my head, is that you know, the institutions can choose whether or not they want to be involved in the Perkins Loan Program. And when they do, they often leverage those federal dollars and bring in private additional dollars so that they'll have a bigger pool of money to loan out to their current students. Also, because it's a revolving fund, it means that there's not a new infusion of federal dollars every year. In fact, that's one of the benefits of it in terms of its cost effectiveness, is as people pay back with that low interest rate, that goes back into the revolving fund and is then loaned out to future students. And so people really look at it as a win-win situation, including students themselves. I mean, I heard recently paying back, it felt different than paying back other loans because he knew that it was giving an opportunity to a new student. And I just have to say that that's, you know, how often do you hear something like that? But he was very proud of the help that it gave him when he really needed it to be able to finish his education. And now that he's successfully initiated his career, he's a small business owner, he just felt really great that in paying it back, he was helping a current student. All right. Thank you so much for joining the Google Hangout, and certainly I think you know how to get back in contact with our office if you have any follow-up facts and figures that you need. But thanks so much for your interest in advocating for your readers and the Perkins Loan.